Problem 16. The graph of the following function is symmetric about which of the following? And note that that's the floor function not exceeding x. So first of all, let's evaluate each term. What is this value? Well, give ourselves several outputs, right? This is 0, 0.5, 1, 1.5, 2, and we'll give her some negatives, negative 0.5, negative 1, negative 1.5, negative 2. So for when it's 0, that's obviously 0, this is obviously 1, and this is obviously 2. The negative 1 is obviously negative 1, that's obviously negative 2. Well, we have to round down basically, so that's 0, and that's also equal to 1. So what about negatives? Well, when you round down, think about what it means to round down. When 0.5 gets rounded down into 0, we want to find a number that's less than this. So if we were to have a number line, that's 0, we have negative 0.5, for example, negative 0.5. What is the number that's less than negative 0.5? Well, that's obviously negative 1, because when you go left, it becomes smaller. So this gets rounded down into negative 1, and this gets rounded down to negative 2. So basically, we can say that for positive numbers, from the positive number n to n plus 1, not inclusive, that gets rounded down to n. And then we know that if n is negative, right, if it's negative, then it gets rounded down as well. So that is going to be the following values. But now let's consider values for the absolute value. Well, it gets absolute value, so this actually becomes positive, 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 right? Because this is absolute value of the floor function. So this is going to be x, and now let's give ourselves some outputs for the absolute value of 1 minus x floored. Well, when x is 0, we give the same values because we want to get like a pattern. So 2, negative 0.5, negative 1, negative 1.5, negative 2. So for 0, right, when we plug in 0, that's obviously 1. 1. When 1 minus 1 is obviously 0. 2, that's negative 1. Well, negative 1 is just negative 1, so that just becomes 1. Right? And then what about negative 1? Negative 1 becomes 2, and negative 2 becomes 3. Now let's consider 0.5. 0.5 becomes 0.5. Rounded down gets 0, so that becomes 0. 1.5, well, that's the same thing as negative 0.5, so that becomes negative 0.5. So what is negative 0.5? Well, that becomes negative 1, so that becomes 1. And then negative 0.5 minus 1 minus negative 0.5 will be 1.5, rounded down is 1, so that's equal to 1. And then negative 1.5, that's equal to 2. So now we can simply subtract it out. What is this minus that? Well, this becomes 0 minus 1, which is negative 1. 0 minus 0 is 0. 1 minus 0 is 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. When it's 2, 2 minus 1 is 1. And when it's that, 1 minus 1 is 0. 1 minus 2 is negative 1, 2 minus 2 is 0, and 2 minus that is negative 1. So we see that it's going to be a very neat looking pattern, which is to say it's going to be, when it's 0, 0, negative 1. And then it's 0, comma 0, right? No, then it's 0.5, comma 0, right? And then it's going to be 1, comma 1, 1, comma 1. And then it's going to be 1.5, comma 0. And then it's going to be 2, comma 1. So 2, comma 1 is going to be roughly right here. And then negative 0.5 is going to be a 0. And then negative 1, so that's going to be right here. And then negative 1.50 will be right here. And negative 2, negative 1 will look right here. So the shape is very odd looking. It looks something like this. Right? So let's see what it's symmetric about. Well, it's obviously not the y-axis, obviously, because if you were to reflect this over, that's not going to be the same. Right? So now what about the line x is equal to 1? Well, obviously, that's wrong as well, because we know that when that's 1, 1 comma 1 is going to be right here. So if you reflect it over about this point, you don't get the same thing over. The origin sounds plausible, because if you were to rotate it about the origin, right, then you get this shape. Oh, no, that doesn't sound plausible. Origin's out. The point half comma 0. Well, half comma 0 is this point right here. And that makes sense, because if you were to reflect it over about this point, you get something like this, which matches the thing right here. So I would say it's choice D. And what about 1 comma 0? Well, 1 comma 0 is going to be the point that's going to be right there. That's obviously not going to work. And so your final answer is going to be answer choice D, just from visual inspection of a rough graph.